Hello and welcome, Matt Side, Knight Uretsky, Janelle Cook, and today, Gannon, number 3, Limestone, number 6. These are two really good Division II programs. Should be an exciting one. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and give you guys the explanation for the compulsory event.
We're starting off here with Compulsory Acro. So the first heat of the meet. Compulsory event has all of the skills are the same, and as we go on through the meet, we'll have more optional events. Then the teams will select the skills that they compete. But during compulsory, we're going to say the same skills from both teams in all 4 heats.
So this is Limestone competing in the compulsory event.
So big keys to execution during compulsory. These are the foundational skills of acrobatics and tumbling. So the building blocks for these teams to progress to more difficult skills later on in the meet. So a big component of this is synchronization, which you can see Limestone has done very well. They went up to that arabesque position and then a full twist down to the catch. The officials are going to be really looking closely at the synchronization, the height of those skills, the catch, making sure that their bodies are in a hollow position. So Limestone had a great first meet to start the day.
And here's a look at that compulsory event from Limestone. And you can normally tell how a team feels about how they do in the compulsory event based on the look when they leave the mat. If teams are very excited, then they feel very good about what they just did. If they don't look as excited, then you know something definitely went wrong.
Definitely, yeah. You can see the reactions. We talked with all of the coaches yesterday. They all had different thoughts about compulsory, but across the board, they agreed that this really sets the tone for the meet. Each team wants to come out, have a strong showing in compulsory. It's also a chance for them to kind of get a feel for officiating, to see what the officials on the panel are seeing. And so, again, yeah, you're right. You can see from the reactions how they feel about it when they move off the mat.
So if you're new to acrobatics and tumbling, let's kind of walk you through the format of this meet. An acrobatics and tumbling meet's going to have 6 events. This is the compulsory event, which is event number 1. There's going to be 20 total heats in the compulsory. There's 4 heats overall. There's going to be 2 halves to this sport. In the first half, it's the compulsory, the acro, and then the pyramid. And then the second half is what I like to call the triple T's, the toss, the tumble, and team events. There's going to be a 15-minute halftime break in between, and running score is kept throughout the meet, with the winner of the meet being announced at the very end, and that's the team with the most cumulative points at the end of all 6 events. As we're about to get set for Gannon's portion in the opening acro compulsory.
So again, we're going to see 2 groups out here on the floor. They're going to see the same skills that Limestone just competed. So they start here with what is known as a toe pitch. So they grab them by the foot, toss them up to that shoulder level and catch. Then they're going to do a tuck off. So you can see the synchronization's great. The height of those skills was good. As they climb up to the shoulder level here, they'll go to a straddle hold. And then they're going to pop over there to an inverted position. So you want to see straight body lines. They need to hold each of these positions for 3 seconds. So if they let go of those hands, you want to see stability, not a lot of movement at the tops, and then that pop down to the landing. The last part of the sequence, they're going to go up to it's called a switch up, where they switch the feet that they're holding to the arabesque position, and a full twist down. So both teams off to a really great start. There'll be small execution errors for stability, for the catches, the body positions, and the catches, and at the top of those skills. But I think both of those teams are off to a really great start.
Let's go ahead and look at the replay one more time. Again, this is Gannon University in the compulsory acro portion.
So you can see even the synchronization of the arms and that tuck off. They both go to their knees and then back out. Here for the pop over, you'll see as they let go of the hands, you'll see a little minor stability. You can see the group on the left, the feet move just a little bit. So those will be some minor deductions that they'll take. A little bit of synchronization there as they came down. So deductions are taken in a range, so it's based on the severity of the error. So those are really small errors. They might get 0.05 or a tenth off. If it's a larger error, it's a range of up to, maybe 2/10 or 3/10 depending on the deduction.
Could you describe what a large error is compared to a minor error?
Yeah, so we saw some really small errors there. A larger error may be, a full of the entire body moving instead of just those feet moving. If you saw that one catch, happened at a completely different second, than a whole second in between the catches, you might see movement from the bases, steps, or things like that are taken. So you'll see as we go on, we'll kind of point some things out and we'll start to see what those larger errors look like versus the small errors.
Absolutely. Again, we'll welcome into the compulsory event. We just finished up the Acro heat. In the compulsory, there's the Acro, the pyramid, the toss, and the tumbling heat. And now Limestone University is going to get set to come out onto the mat for the pyramid heat.
Please welcome the Limestone Saints.
So compulsory pyramid is new this year. There's a compulsory committee that reviews the compulsory skills every 3 years to make sure that they're keeping pace with the progressions and the evolution of the sport. And so this is the first year that this compulsory pyramid has been competed for a full season. So you can see there's 2 bases. They're going to a thigh stand there where they're holding the mid-level base. The top will twist all the way up there to the top. They're going to hold this position for 3 seconds, go to a straddle hold for 3 seconds, and then they're going to twist, or excuse me, they're going to flip down to that cradle.
So that was Limestone University competing in the pyramid heat. Both pyramids synchronized. And like you said, every 3 years there's a committee that revises the compulsory skills that are being performed, and this is a new one for the pyramid. Are these skills monitored per heat, or is it the compulsory as a whole that are changed every 3 years?
Yeah, they're looked at heat by heat, and so some of the heats haven't changed in a long time. For example, compulsory tumbling that we'll see at the end of the event. Those skills have been in place for several years, and there isn't much any movement there in terms of trying to look at different skills. Compulsory pyramid used to be an inverted pyramid when the sport was trending towards more inverted skills. But as the pyramid event evolved, we were seeing that those inverted pyramids they don't score as high, and they weren't the options that the teams were choosing. They were choosing to do more of the straddle holds, the extended, fewer bases, those extended positions. And so that was the movement in pyramid. So it just depends. They look at all of them each 3 years, but there's not necessarily a change to each of them all 3 years.
That was Limestone. Gannon getting ready to take the mat for the pyramid heat in the compulsory event. Gannon this season 8-1, best season in program history. They had 6 ranked wins against opponents, including one here at the University of Oregon against Oregon. That was a huge win for their season, and I think that really set the tone for what this Gannon team is going to be like in the tournament.
Yeah, we talked with Coach Jackie Eshelman last night and asked her about the season and the progression and if that was a big turning point for them. And she said it was definitely gave them a lot of confidence. They came out west. They wanted to come out and compete against some ranked opponents. They lost earlier in the week to Azusa Pacific down at their place and came up to Oregon, put in a better performance, and were able to beat Oregon. So from there, they've just continued to ascend and do great things throughout the remainder of the season.
Here are the Gannon Knights.
So again, we'll see those identical skills to Limestone. The top is going to twist up to that hold. And take a look at straddle positions, because that'll be something, the body positions of the tops will be really important. Then the catches here at the end.
So that was Gannon competing in the pyramid heat in the compulsory event. We'll show you guys another look at that one.
So great view here straight on, and you look at the synchronization, the timing of those straddle positions. You can see the group on the right, the degree of her hold is a little higher than the group on the right, so there might be a slight deduction for that. But overall, a very solid heat for compulsory pyramid for Gannon.
Again, scoring for the meet is done live throughout. The officials don't have any benefit to looking at instant replay, slowing it down. They're scoring it live, they're watching with their eyes, and then they're meeting after the entire event to discuss the scores, and then they'll tally it up, and at the very end of the event, then they'll announce it for everybody. But these officials, they're scoring in real time. They're looking at it, and it's hard. There's a lot going on, and they're looking all over the place.
You're absolutely right. It's incredibly difficult. We have the benefit of replay. We can walk it back, slow it down even, and they're doing this in real time. So they're trained annually by the NCATA in these technical execution deductions. For the championships, there's actually a 5-official panel, and so there's a head official, and then there's 4 execution officials, and their scores are averaged to reach a final score for each heat.
Limestone's now coming out for the toss heat in the compulsory event.
So in the compulsory toss, we're going to see a back tuck. So you want to really see the height of this skill as well as the synchronization and the extension of the tops. So great heat for Limestone. So you want to see extension as the tossing group below, the basing group tosses the top up into the air. You want to see them fully extended before they start to do that tuck. So that you'll see the extension of the toss here. We'll look at the replay. Executing the skill at the very height of their toss, and then becoming extended again before they come back into that cradle. So it was a great heat for Limestone. Again, glad I'm not an official and I can just talk through it because it's tough to see potential small errors, but they had synchronization. It looked like they had strong catches, and it looked like they had good extension and good height on the skills.
I think the synchronization portion of the toss event is by far the hardest thing to master because you're dealing with tops with different heights, you're dealing with bases with different strengths, and you have to combine together as a team to toss the person or both people up at the same time and have it synchronized, which is a very hard thing to do.
You're right. The synchronization of several heats throughout the meet is one of the things that makes acrobatics and tumbling so unique, and the group element to it. And you're right. Think about, there's 4 people tossing, and they have to have that muscle memory to know just how hard they're going to toss. The tops are maybe different sizes, different heights. All of those different things factor in. So the repetition that they do throughout the season and training helps them nail that down so they know just, the right amount of power to put into that toss.
Here are the Gannon Knights coming out for the toss heat. Again, we're here in the first event, the compulsory event.
So we'll see that back tuck toss again. Even the synchronization starts at the very beginning and that load into the toss. So really nice heat.
So that was the Gannon Knights in the toss heat. Let's go ahead and look at the replay one more time.
Really nice synchronization. Again, the toss is probably the hardest for me to analyze. I think I've learned a lot more about the other events over the years, but the height of those skills, the extension of the tops, and the catches, the top should land in a hollow body position. So it's not exactly flat, but they don't want to have their their feet or their head above their hips to a large degree. So if they come down and they're in sort of a piked position or a 90 degrees, that's going to be a deduction. Those tops landed in a pretty hollow position. So that'll be something to look for throughout the tournaments.
And that's one of the, things that you can watch and really see big deductions for. Because when teams don't have a hollow-bodied position when they catch a player, then you can really see deductions come because a player could be so lopsided that it's super easy to see for an official, whereas maybe seeing a few steps, maybe not as easy.
Sure, you're right. And that's something that, we can pick out a little easier in real time. You can see differences in synchronization. You can see if there isn't quite the height. And then, like you said, in those catches, you can see if the bases, a lot of times if the top is piked down or isn't in that hollow body position, you'll see a lot of movement in the bases, or it looks like the catch kind of is hard against the bases, where if they're in that position, it's more of a soft landing, a smooth landing into the catch.
So here's Limestone coming out for the tumbling heat in the compulsory event.
So 8 athletes on the floor. They're starting with standing tumbling sequences, starting with a standing back tuck. They're going to move into a straddle jump, back tuck. We'll see a back handspring, back tuck, all from a standing position. So generating all that power without any, movement on the front end of that. Now we'll go to the running tumbling. We'll do a round off, back handspring, layout. And again, with 8 athletes on the floor, the synchronization and the timing is huge. But the officials are going to be looking for really, technical deductions. Are their knees bent? Are they going to be looking at how high on those straddle jumps? Are they reaching 90 degrees on that straddle jump? So there's going to be lots of little minor errors. Compulsory tumbling is usually the lowest score of compulsory, just because of the number of athletes and the number of skills involved. And similar for compulsory acro. And then landings. That's something that we as individuals can see a little bit easier without all the training as an official. So they want to land with their chest up. They don't want movement on the landing. That's just going to be a stuck landing. So you see a little bit of hops and things like that. Those will be small deductions. An example of a step deduction, it can be if it's per occurrence. So if they take 2 steps, they're going to get 2 tenths. If they take 1 step, it'll be 1 tenth.
And a tenth is a huge amount of points for any team. I mean, you can win a meet by less than a fraction of a tenth. I mean, you can really win a meet by 0.005 points. Every
Correct.
Single point matters in acrobatics and tumbling.
You're right, and in compulsory, and as we talked about earlier, the coaches are really looking this as kind of the bellwether for the meet. And so every 10th counts, and it's, some of the coaches mentioned that this is an opportunity to create some separation because of the difficulty that's involved in the synchronization of compulsory acro, especially in compulsory tumbling. It's an opportunity with really good execution to gain a few tenths and go into the rest of the meet with a slight lead.
So that was Limestone wrapping up the compulsory event for themselves. Gannon waiting on standby to come out for the tumbling heat. The tumbling heat is the final heat in the compulsory event, so we're almost through event number 1. And here come the Gannon Knights.
So everything in compulsory is to specific counts. So, and again, as they compete the identical skills, they also have to compete them to the identical counts. They also have to be in their identical position. So as they move from the standing tumbling and they move over to the running tumbling, they have to stay in the order that they are on the mat.
So that was the Gannon Knights wrapping up the compulsory event. Again, all the scoring is going to be done just in a few moments. The officials are going to confirm and really look at what they saw throughout the entire event and tally it up. But let's go ahead and look at the replay one more time.
Yeah, so you can see as we look at the replay a few small steps. The steps after they complete on the landing are the ones that count. If they step forward after the skill, that's not a deduction. But as you see, as we go into running, tumbling, take a look at those landings. The timing looks very good. You can see the rise of the layout, but you can see some of the athletes took a step. Some of the athletes land with their chest a little bit forward. Those will all be small deductions that will be tallied up for compulsory.
But that was Gannon wrapping up the compulsory event. Again, the officials, they're going to score it right now. They're converging, discussing what the scores will be. In the compulsory event, the start values for every single heat is a start value of 10. But while the officials are going to score and converge right now, we're going to step aside and take a break. But when we come back, we're going to have the Acro event right after we announce the compulsory scores. Welcome back inside to Matthew Knight Arena. We just wrapped up the compulsory event, and let's go ahead and look at the scores. So for Gannon in the acro heat, they outdid Limestone 9.525 to 9.450. In the pyramid, 9.85 or 875, excuse me, to 9.550 in the pyramid heat. Gannon again beating Limestone 9.900 in the toss to Limestone's 9.750. Gannon in the tumbling heat, 8.66 or 600. The tumbling's 8.475. Overall, Gannon winning the compulsory event 37.900 to Limestone's 37.200. So already Gannon, the 3 seed, off to a great start and getting ahead with a little bit of an advantage over the Saints.
For the compulsory Acro heat.
And now we're going to give a little bit of an explanation into the Acro event. So let's go ahead and show you guys the video to educate you on the Acro event.
And next up is the Acro event.
This begins the optional portion of the meet.
Each team will compete different skills with different possible start values.
There will be between 2 and 4 athletes on the floor in each heat.
Heat 1 has 5 elements, Heat 2 has 6 elements, and Heat 3 has 7 elements.
The start value is determined by the difficulty and combination of each sequence.
This event shows power, strength, and balance, so look for stability of the structure and position of the top.
So that is the explanation for the Acro heat. They're currently announcing the scores here at Matthew Knight Arena to everybody, but Gannon with a little bit of a lead right now. Gannon is the higher seed. The Limestone still was able to execute. They're only a few points down. There's a long way to go. There's still 5 more heats to play. Anything can happen.
You're right, absolutely. This is just setting the tone. It's a 7/10 difference there. And something that Limestone can certainly overcome, but it's a great start for Gannon, and I think it's in line with what they were expected to do today. It's right in line, and actually a little bit higher than what they averaged over the season. The same for Limestone. It's right on pace for Limestone with what they did during the regular season. So I think both of these teams are off to a great start.
Again, these are the scores right now. The Limestone, they're a little bit of a smaller program. They did win the Conference Carolinas, which is a Division II acrobatics and tumbling conference, and they were able to win that 11-0 overall in the year, but they haven't played a team like Gannon, and Gannon's a really, really competitive team, 6 ranked wins on the year, and this one's shaping up to be an exciting one. Limestone, their head coach is Michaela Soper, who was actually coached by Gannon's head coach, Jackie Eshelman. And I think that both of these coaches, they have a lot of respect for each other, but there's a lot of friendly competition happening here today.
Absolutely. The acrobatics and tumbling community is incredibly collaborative. It's the way that the sport has grown and evolved and been as successful as it is. And as we talked with those coaches yesterday, they were noting that all around, you know, the mentorship, the community. And so I know it's really special for Michaela to be able to be here and go up against her alma mater.
So here's Limestone out in the Acro 5.
So this is a great sequence here. Marita Musser, number 29, here's the top. She's in that inverted position. She's going to press down all the way to a straddle. You can see the continuity of that skill. She kept the same pace from the top down to this hold in the straddle. She's going to pop over and do another inverted skill. Hold that position for 3 seconds. Go to the single base. So you can see a little bit of movement, a little bit of shaking. Some of that is normal. You're counterbalancing, you're holding each other. So that, you know, that could be a small deduction, but a really solid first heat for Limestone.
So that was the Acro 5 heat from Limestone University. Let's go ahead and take another look and see Jessica Rubo, who's a stud base for Limestone right there.
Yeah, and as you see that straddle position, that hold, the beautiful lines. She's at a 90-degree angle. She holds everything for 3 seconds. The smooth transitions between the skills. There's not breaks in the continuity of the skills. And strong hold there, down to the dismount.
So that was Limestone, and they have a start value of 10, and that's something that we see a lot in the first half. In fact, the entire first half, the start values are 10. In the second half of an acrobatics and tumbling meet, that's where you really start to see the shift in start values. Can you just talk about what start values mean for the sport?
Yeah, absolutely. So in compulsory, everything starts from a 10. The maximum value is 10, like you said. In Acro and Pyramid, there are so many skills and so many skill combinations that a lot of times we see what you're saying. There's a lot of ways to do a lot of really difficult things. And so we see a lot of 10 start values across the board for these teams in the Acro and Pyramids events. We see some differentiation in the second half in the triple Ts, as you coined them. In toss and tumbling and team event is where we start to see some start value differentiation.
So here's the Gannon Knights, Acro 5.
So that skill that they're starting off with is called a toe pitch. So they grab them by the feet and pop them into the air to that shoulder level. And she's doing a full twisting layout off of that to the ground. And then you see that's called a walk-in. They stayed connected to him, but she went all the way from the ground to that extended position with 2 bases and then a 360 twist down to the ground. And now this is a little, I never know how their arms quite work in that situation, but they go up to the inverted position that you saw in the compulsory, just with that different entry. So a little bit added difficulty and a really solid heat for Gannon in the Acro 5 element.
Yeah, big smiles for the Knights. Let's go ahead and look at that one more time.
So that's the toe pitch. You see the height there that she gets in the skill, and there's a release before she grabs her feet at the shoulder level. Holds that position for 3 seconds. That's the layout, twisting. You can see that she landed, with her arms extended to the base. As we go on in the meet, you might see if a landing happens really close or really far away, that would be a deduction. That one was appropriate with the extended hands. And you can see that 360 twist down to the final inverted skill. And again, the hold, the strength of the body position, the stability between the base and the top, those are all going to be the things that are going to be the minor errors that might make these create the separation between these teams.
So that was Gannon wrapping up the Acro 5 heat. Again, in the Acro event, there were 3 heats, the Acro 5, the Acro 6, the Acro 7. Each heat, different amount of elements that a team has to perform, a certain amount of skills, and in the 5 element, you guessed it, 5 skills, 6 elements, 6 skills, 7 elements, 7 skills. And so you'll see as the Acro event goes on, more and more skills being performed. And I think the biggest thing is there's a 45 seconds time clock, and so there's 45 seconds for these teams to really execute these skills.
You're right. The time is crucial to the event. But the cool thing about this is that we're in the optional portion. So the teams get to select the skills that are the strengths of their student athletes. And so you see them doing different skills here. And that's the difficulty of the skills, and the combination of the skills is what creates the difficulty for the overall sequence. There's also special requirements, so they have to have certain skills that are at a certain level incorporated into those sequences in order to meet the requirements of the heat. So in addition to having the 6 elements, they have to make sure that they have a certain level of difficulty in each.
So that was Limestone competing in the Acro 6.
And you can see their top number 41, Kayla Gamaldo. She's a sophomore, so she started in that shoulder position, did a pop around. So, and then you see there's a secondary base there supporting for some of the elements. So those will be declared skills. And then taking that all the way to extension, Brooke McAfee, a senior base. You can see some stability there. So it wasn't quite as solid, and as they went from the shoulder position to the extended position, you could see some movement between the arms of the base and up at the top for the top. But they counterbalance and they hold that, and there always is that counterbalancing that's occurring between the top and the base, but that will be an error that will be assessed by the officials.
That base was Brooke McAfee, and you talked about her a little bit. She's a senior base and tumbler from Chapin, South Carolina. She is an NCATA All-American this year, and a lot of that was due to Jessica Rubo, who we saw earlier. She got injured, and then Brooke McAfee really stepped it up, started competing, had to compete in 14 out of 14 heats one time in place of Rubo, and McAfee, she's done a really great job and has led to an All-American award this season. Now Gannon's going to come out to the mat, and here are the Gannon Knights competing in the Acro 6.
So we see number 4, Susie Whiteman, the same top that we saw in the 5 element here in the 6 element. They did that toe pitch to the shoulder level again. She does a laid out position. You can see a very nice rise of that skill. She went up in the air, came down to the solid landing. Now they're going to that ground to extension again, just one base. In 5 element, they utilize 2 bases. And the twist down, the 360 twist down. So you can see a very similar sequence to the 5 element, but they'll have to add some additional skill here at the end. And so they'll do that release, whereas in the 5 element they stayed connected to that base. They have the release here, the hold, down to the 6, or to the 4 for the 6th element.
I think the coolest part about acrobatics and tumbling is throughout the entire meet, you get to really see the progression of skills. And you start with the compulsory, as we look into the replay right here, but you start with the compulsory, and then you build upon that, and then you go into the acro. And even when you go into the acro, you're building upon it each and every heat. You move from the 5 element to the 6 element, like you said, and right here, as we look at the replay, they just add another element to what they just did in the Acro 5, and I think it's really awesome to see the progression throughout the meet.
Yeah, and it's a testament to the compulsory committee and creating those progressions and those building blocks in that compulsory event that allow the teams to incorporate that into creating more difficult sequences to progress through the Acro event, the pyramid event, toss and tumbling. But yeah, in Acro you'll see that very similarly. A team has a strength, they're going to run with it and put their best athletes out on the floor and try to maximize that, you know, and create those combinations that include those difficult skills with those talented athletes with maybe some of those compulsory skills that round out the requirements of the heat.
So now Limestone's going to come out for the final heat in the in the Acro event. So here are the Saints.
So number 29, again, the solid top for the first half in Limestone, Marita Moser. And she did the shoulder climb up there to that shoulder level. She's going to go to extension. Hold that position. She's going to go back into that inverted position, the inverted handstand, all the way to the top. Hold that for 3. So you can see some shaking there on the base. And she's going to do that pike down again. Look at that, down to a straddle. The continuous flow of the skill is really impressive. It's difficult, as you can imagine, to press down and to keep that same pace throughout the skill. And they're coming over, see a little bit of that compulsory skill in play here. And a really solid heat. Marita Moser is a powerhouse in the first half for Limestone. She's a top in 2 of the Acro heats, and then we'll see her again in pyramid event. Just an excellent top, a specialist for Limestone, executing really well.
Yeah, Messer, she's a senior for the Saints, and she's done a really great job to start here. And when talking to Coach Michaela Soper, she described Musser as somebody that leads by example. She's a huge vocal leader on this team, and you could really tell that as she was exiting the mat, her entire team came around her, and they were really just surrounding her, and I think that just describes who she is as an athlete. She's an athlete that everybody's gravitating towards and wants to hear about, and in the opening half, she's done a lot, and I think that a lot of these athletes are going to be gravitating towards her, and really look into her as they move on throughout the meet.
Yeah, and Coach Soper talks about the senior class. They started the program at Limestone 4 years ago. They had a goal of making the national championships with COVID and everything that occurred. Last year's tournament being just 4 teams, they didn't qualify. So this is the realization of a dream for these seniors. And so seniors like Marita and others, Brooke McAfee and Jessica Rubo that we mentioned, are leading this program.
So here's Gannon. This is the final heat in the Acro event.
So we see the toe pitch there to the shoulder level and a full layout twist and with a full twist 360 degrees down. Now she's going up to the shoulder level. And the second base is stepping in there. She's going to go up to the press. To the inverted handstand before she presses down pike position here. Holds that for 3 seconds. And that second base steps away. It's another 3-second hold. Pop over to the inverted position. Allie Price, the top there, number 2. She's a huge competitor, an All-American for Gannon, and we'll see her throughout the meet.
As we're going
She's a
to
sophomore.
look right through. Yes.
Only a sophomore.
Only a sophomore.
So you see that she started with that full off down, climbing up to the shoulder. So there's a lot of different ways that they can do the ascending skills and descending skills of the Acro event. So you can see some of them are more difficult with that toe pitch or things that are release skills. The shoulder climb is a little bit simpler to get up, but it leads now to the more difficult elements of the sequence. You can see here where she pikes down. You can see a little bit of difference in the speed that Allie pressed down versus the speed of Marita Muster pressing down. And again, that it's all about the continuity of that. So, you know, her speed, there's nothing wrong with Allie's speed or Marita's, but it was just making sure that that is a continuous pace to reach that skill.
So that'll wrap up the Acro event. They're tallying up the scores right now, and when we come back from this break, we're going to introduce the Pyramid event and go through the scores for the Acro event. Quarterfinal matchup between number 3 Gannon and number 6 Limestone. Let's go ahead and look at the scores for the Acro event. Gannon and Limestone even in the Acro 5. 9.700. Gannon got the edge in heat number 2, which was the Acro 6, 9.600 to Limestone's 9.250. In heat number 3, the Acro 7, Gannon 9.800, Limestone 9.625. That wrapped up the Acro event. Gannon finishing with the 29.100, Limestone 28.625. Overall, so far through the first 2 events, Gannon 67.000, Limestone 0.825. So a little bit larger of a lead than we saw after the first event. Nonetheless, still within reach for Limestone.
Absolutely, and really on pace for both of these teams. Gannon averaging a 28.2 in the event over the season, the course of the season. So you can see with the 29, they really did a great job this morning. We have a quick medical cleanup on the floor, so kudos to Heather Halseth and the athletic training team here at the University of Oregon taking care of business. Limestone also doing a great job. They averaged 28.3 throughout the season and excelled above that for their average for today. So I think both teams are really happy. Like you said, it's still close. Pyramid's going to be really close as well, and so we'll see where they land going into halftime.
Again, in the first half, both teams had start values of 10.0 so far, and so when you look at those scores, those are out of 10 in each of those heat. Total, it's out of 30. And in the first half, it's pretty even. The start values are very, very similar. And we're 2 events in, and we're about to start the Pyramid event. And as they're announcing the scores right now here in Matthew Knight Arena.
For Heat 2, Limestone 9.25 and Gannon 9.60.
I think it's really exciting in acrobatics and tumbling that they announce the scores in front of everybody, because it's very suspenseful, especially when you get further and further in the meet. And right before that team event, when they're announcing the scores, it could go anyone's way, and everybody's on the edge of their seat waiting as we announce the scores.
Absolutely, and back when the sport started, the scores were announced by heat, and so, but that really added to the length of the meet. And as you noted, in terms of the fan experience, it's a little more exciting to let all the competition happen and then have all the scores announced at once.
I couldn't imagine if they announced it after every single heat. That would take a lot more time, and I think that is just a testament to the sport just being able to adapt and grow. We're now going to introduce you guys to the Pyramid event.
The Pyramid event is coming up.
In this event, you will see pyramids that are 3 levels high.
This event has 3 different heats with different requirements for each.
Heat 1 must have an inversion, Heat 2 must be synchronized, and Heat 3 is the open heat.
The start value of each heat is determined by the difficulty and combination of the structure, entry, dismount, and top body position.
Some of the things the officials will be looking for are the positions of the tops and sturdiness of construction.
So those are the rules for the pyramid event as Limestone comes onto the mat as we begin heat number 1 in the pyramid event, the inversion pyramid.
So as the heat name suggests, you're going to see an inverted body position. You see number 29, Rita Musser, back on the floor. So they've got 4 bases there at the bottom doing the thigh stands. They have a base supporting in the back. And Rita's going to go to that extended inverted handstand. The arms of the base and the top are fully extended. She's pressing down. We saw the straddle hold in the Acro event. She's doing a pike hold here. And then just a quick twist down to the floor. 180 degrees of twist on the dismount. So a really solid start. This has been a pyramid that's done well all throughout the season. But the one to watch will be heat 3 for Limestone. But as we look in the replay here, you can see those bases and the support of the base behind the back. Pressing up, just a really strong body position there. A little bit of movement in those bases' arms. Those will be, again, those little minor things the officials are looking for. She holds that position. Really continuous movement here on the pike down. Good body position in the pike and the hold, and then 180 degrees twist down. Solid landing. A little flare from the mid base as she hops off as well. And a great start for Limestone for the first heat.
That mid base is Jessica Rubo, the senior, and even just talking to head coach Michaela Soper, she really praised Rubo. She said that she has one of the highest A&T IQs on the team, and you can see right there, just having a little bit of fun being that mid base.
Yeah, that was fun to hear. Coach Soper said she has the type of team that really likes to talk shop. They like to come in, learn all they can about the sport, and Jessica Rubo is one of the leaders there that likes to come in, learn everything that she can, think about ways to help with the team, potentially interested in coaching, which would be great.
That's what you'll see a lot of these former student athletes becoming coaches. And now Gannon's going to come onto the floor for the inversion pyramid heat.
So we'll see a different structure here, something similar to compulsory. You got 2 bases on a thigh stand. We do have a base supporting in the back if you can't quite see her from this angle. Allie Price, number 2 at the top, and she is going to go into an extended position there. So you can see a little bit of counterbalance there. Coming off the top directly down into that cradle position. So again, as we talk through catches in the compulsory event, the coaches they're looking for it too. But the officials will be looking for that hollow body position and no movement in that cradle. And the catches, they want catches to be high as well. They don't want to catch the base real low down by their hips or above their shoulders, but they want to try to catch right at that shoulder level. So as you see, Allie goes into that extended position. Again, the stability of the entire structure is what the officials are looking for, as well as the hold and the position of the top. And then into that cradle position, this is a great angle to look at it. You can see she maintains that body position, not any movement by the bases when she lands. So a very nice catch for Gannon.
That was Gannon competing in the inversion pyramid, and on the top, we saw Allie Price, and Allie Price is a sophomore top and tumbler from New Paris, Pennsylvania. This year, NCATA All-American as a sophomore, and head coach Jackie Eshelman, she described her as a, quote, freak of nature. Just make adjustments on the fly, and Allie Price, she's met so much of this Gannon team throughout the year, and it's been exciting to watch her here in the first half. Limestone coming back out is going to be the duo pyramid heat.
So again, with the synchronized heats, every aspect of the heat needs to be synchronized. You can hear the counting, you can see that the movements are all together. So we've got the 2 bases in the thigh stand with the back base supporting, the mid base with shoulder levels moving to extension. Really solid for both of those groups. Into a 180 twist down to the cradle. And you can see 3 catchers there. All of those things factor in, the number of catchers, the number of tossers, the number of bases into the difficulty. The difficulty there is a lot from that extended position. So some of the entries and the dismounts are easier than others. but the top body position and any variations that they do at the top will add to the difficulty. So you can see they get to that shoulder level, the bases grab the feet, they hold this position for 3 seconds first before they go into that extended position where they hold again. So really synchronized. Again, you can see just a little bit of stability, but there's a little bit on, you can see the group on the right, Rita Messer, she landed a little bit to the side, so that might be a slight deviation in the catch that the officials would take a deduction for. But again, we got to see that. How many replays? 4 replays.
4 replays.
So, and of course the officials are trained to see that on the first run. They're seated right at the middle of the mat, looking dead on, the same view, but at the mat level that the fans are seeing in the heat. So they'll have a clear view to make sure that they catch all those errors.
And again, in the national championships, there are 5 officials compared to the regular season, and there's only 3 officials.
Correct. So there's officials watching different positions. So we have an official that watches the tops and officials that watch the bases. So at the championships, there's 2 officials watching the tops and 2 officials watching the bases. Their scores are averaged to reach the final heat score.
So here's the Gannon Golden Knights. Heat number 2 in the pyramid, the duos.
So this is a really fun synchronized pyramid. You can see a lot of bodies out on the floor. And what's really fun, they have the thigh stands for the structure. You see the double thigh stands there and the 2 bases, but they toss that top all the way from the ground to that extended position. A really dynamic entry, a really difficult entry to catch there. And then a 180 twist down into the cradle. So a lot of fun. This is actually a pyramid that we used to see more often in the beginning stages of the sport. And as the pyramid evolved and we started to see more single base pyramids, we saw this less and less. It's been brought back around by the scoring committee that oversees all of the scoring and the valuation of skills for the NCATA. And it's really fun. So you can see this entry, they pop them up all the way up to the top and hold that extended position. So really cool, a really fun dynamic pyramid that we've seen from several teams this year. And then that 180 down into the cradle. And you can see, it looks like the catchers are so far away, but they really project the tops and of course they've practiced this, they're lined up where they need to be. But remember the first time watching, I thought, wow, those catchers are pretty far from the structure. But the bases that are holding them up at the top of the structure, they are so strong. You can see the strength in every aspect of this sport, but so strong and really dynamic to toss them and see that flight in the air to the cradle to allow for the time for the twist and the catch.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's so exciting watching Gannon in the duo pyramid. I mean, nobody does the dual pyramid like Gannon. And
it's unique. It's a lot of fun.
It's very unique, and that's the joy we get to have watching it here at the National Championships. Limestone coming back out. This is the open pyramid heat, so a lot more freedom for Limestone here and what they are going to do with the pyramid.
So, in a fun twist here, we're going to see that same pyramid, just one group here. So, we're going to see that toss to extension. Same structure down below. You can see 4 bases, 2 mid bases, and the cradle down. So, Gannon's doing it with 2. Limestone's got the 1 pyramid here, but a really fun, dynamic entry that we've been seeing this year that some teams are starting to take on. But like you said, it's very unique to do it synchronized and have all that many athletes contributing in one heat.
And again, here's the replay for Limestone.
And just looking at the timing of that, as well as the stability of being able to catch, go to the extended position, and keep the stability of the structure. So you can see why they have 2 mid-level bases and 4 bases on the floor to make sure that execution of that toss, you can see the excitement there. They feel pretty good about that heat.
That was Riley Rossman, the sophomore, as the top. She was being held up by Brooke McAfee, and in the first half, Brooke McAfee, she is an All-American, but we've seen her a lot, and she's done a really great job as a base for Limestone. Again, that was the final heat in the pyramid event, so Gannon waiting us on the side right now. at their chance for the open pyramid. Again, right after the pyramid heat number 3, the open pyramid heat, it's going to be halftime, and then there'll be a 15-minute intermission in between, and then we'll have the second half coming up after that. Right now, Gannon coming out, and here's the open pyramid for the Knights.
So the open heat allows for some creativity. So again, the first heat was inverted. The second heat needs to be synchronized. This one allows for creativity, and the teams have the opportunity to submit different pyramids prior to the season for evaluation by the scoring committee and to be competed during the season. So it allows you to see different things, different skills. And here with Gannon, we're seeing the similar thigh stand position with the mid-level base. The top is up. Has been 270 up, so that's 270 degrees of twist up. We have a single base, so she does have a supporting base in the back, and then she moved to that extended position, and we'll see her come down to the catch of the cradle here.
So that was the Gannon Golden Knights in the open pyramid, wrapping up the first half. Let's go ahead and look at the replay one more time. That's Sammy Googe, the mid base. And Googe the base. Jackie Eshelman, she actually described Googe as, quote, a beast.
She did. She did. A strong base, and she also said a really vocal leader and somebody that the team really looks to for leadership throughout the meet.
You can see the catch right there for Gannon. The top, Nicole Pavia. And that'll wrap up the first half again. So there's the compulsory event, the Acro event. So far through the first two events, Gannon currently leading 67.00 to Limestone 65.825. As we're awaiting, and at this time, Jackie Eshelman, she's making her way down the floor, and she's going to join us here just momentarily for a interview. And now welcome Matt Side here at Matthew Knight Arena. Knight Uretsky joined alongside Jackie Eshelman, Angela Cook, and Jackie, it's the national championships. How do you think you guys have fared so far through the first half?
I think they're doing really well. One of the things we're really focused on in practice over these past 2 weeks is their acros, and I think they really shine tonight in their acro event. And I just think that they're keeping a really great, relaxed, having fun, enjoying, and living in the moment, which was really a big goal for us in this meet.
Saw a lot of Allie Price in the first half. Can you just talk about her as an athlete?
Yeah, she's phenomenal. You know, I always call her a little freak of nature. I give her one correction, and she makes it instantaneously. I don't think there's anything that kid can't do. So she's done phenomenal, and she's kept up. You know, again, one of the big things for her and for Abby, any of those athletes that are in a lot of rounds of play, is keeping them really calm and relaxed and just having fun. And you can really see she's having a lot of fun tonight.
You guys have been on pace, today, true. You guys have been on pace, above pace from the season averages through the first half, so that's great going into the second half. What are you looking for from the team in the second half?
Just to continue on with that and just continuing to execute. We made some upgrades right now in our toss events. We took down a little bit of our running tumbling events, but again, just wanting to make sure that we're thinking of impact and how are they going to execute the rest of the week, and we've made some additions and changes into our team routine, so really want to get them out having a really great note and having a great meet underneath their belts today.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here for this interview. Good luck in the second half, and enjoy the national championships.
Good luck the rest of the way.
So we're going to step aside and take a break. It's halftime here at the NCATA National Championships, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, the second half, the Triple T's. Welcome back inside the Matthew Knight Arena. Let's run you through the scores in the pyramid event. Gannon finally lost a heat. Limestone claimed heat number 1, 9.850 to Gannon's 9.800. That was in the inversion pyramid. In heat number 2, Gannon got back out on top, 9.900 to Limestone's 9.750. That was in the duo pyramid. And then in the open pyramid, Gannon again claiming the heat, 9.900, Limestone's 9.850. Total overall in the pyramid event, Gannon 29.600, Limestone 29.450. That brings us to an overall score of Gannon 96.600, Limestone 95.275. We're halfway through. Janelle, just talk about these scores.
Yeah, again, these teams are keeping pace over the season and exceeding their season averages, so I think they're both going to be pleased with this going into the second half. As we talked about a little earlier in the meet, we're going to see some variations in start values now, so we'll have to make sure as fans you guys are paying close attention to the start values of those heats as the scores come through and as you consider the skills that we're seeing on the mat as well.
Absolutely, and again, in the pyramid event, all the start values were at 10. In the entire first half, all the start values were at 10. And so far, through the first half of the meet, these are the scores: 96.600, 95.275. And those will be the scores. We're going to step aside as it is halftime here at the NCATA quarterfinals. But when we come back, we're going to have the triple T's of the second half. Welcome back inside here to Math United Arena. Matt's side, and here we're with Coach Michaela Soper, the head coach at Limestone University. And Coach, through the first half, what are your overall thoughts about your team's performance?
I am so proud of how they are doing. They came to show up today and to compete, and I cannot be more proud with this team. They're deserving of the 6th seed, and that's what we've seen today is that, you know, they're showing that they do deserve to be here. So.
Coach, you're going up against your former coach. What does it mean to be competing against your former coach?
It means everything. You know, that's what this sport is about, is we're creating opportunities, and she was the person that opened the door for me into coaching. And so just being here is an honor, and we're both, you know, we respect each other a lot, and so it means a lot more to compete against an opponent that you do respect.
So great first half. You guys have been exceeding season averages so far, really doing a good job. Are you pleased with the first half, and then what are you looking for the second half?
Yeah, definitely pleased with the first half. I mean, I couldn't have asked for anything more right now. You know, it's a lot with the travel, and for their first time coming out here at a national championship, and so that was just incredible to see that they were able to pull it out like that. And so the second half, you know, we've made some upgrades, and so I'm just hoping that they're able to capitalize on that and be able to just land on their feet, really just do what they need to do, what they've done in practice. So we're excited to see what they have. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sitting with us and talking a little bit. We're going to step aside and take another break here at the NCATA National Championships. When we come back, we're going to have the second half here on ESPN+. Welcome back. Halfway through the opening quarterfinal matchup between number 3 Gannon and number 6 Limestone. Let's go ahead and look at the scores again. Gannon winning the compulsory event 37.900 to Limestone's 37.200. In the Acro event, Gannon 29.100. Acro for Limestone 28.825, and then Gannon in the pyramid event 29.600. Limestone 29.450. And we're halfway through this opening quarterfinal match. Let's go ahead and look at the schedule for the rest of the day. So, like we have here, the 6 versus 3 seed coming up right after this at 1:30. The number 2 seed, Azusa Pacific, taking on number 7, Fairmont State. At 4:30, the number 1 seeded Baylor Bears coming out, taking on Converse, the 8 seed. And then tonight, the 4 versus 5 matchup, Quinnipiac versus Oregon, should be a very exciting one. Those two teams played in the regular season. Quinnipiac won by less than a point. So that one should be a very exciting close contention.
A great nightcap for the home team here and the Eugene crowd. So we're really looking forward to that matchup, the final matchup of the day.
Oregon is the 5 seed overall, but that is the schedule for the remainder of the day. And again, we're halfway through the opening quarterfinal matchup. Number 3, Gannon, 8-1 overall in the year. Their only loss of the year was to the Baylor Bears, who is number 1. And Gannon's a really, really solid program. Limestone, another really solid Division II program. Limestone 11-0 overall on the season. These two teams have been competitive so far. We're less than 2-point difference at the halftime break. As we're getting set, both teams are warming up right now.
Yeah, we're going to see a little bit of difference in start values as we move through the rest of the heat. So both teams started with full start values, 40 points in compulsory, of course, those are all the same, but also 30 points in the Acro and pyramid events. So we're going to see those move just a little bit. Gannon's going to start with 29.9 in the toss event overall, and Limestone will start with 29.2. So you'll see some differences there, as well as in the tumbling events.
As they're currently announcing the scores here at Math United Arena. But again, yes, the start values really start to differentiate here in the second half. Gannon has a lot more 10.0 start values compared to Limestone. Nonetheless, it's all about execution, and that's the big thing about start values. If you have a higher start value, you're still going to have to execute. If you have a lower start value, maybe it's not as difficult, but you can execute at a better ability. Let's go ahead and introduce you guys, though, to the toss event.
Next up is the toss event.
Here you will see a group of athletes toss another athlete into the air.
The top will perform a flip and/or twist in the air before being caught.
There are 3 heats in this event.
Heat 1 is the salto toss. Heat 2 is the duo toss, in which 2 groups will need to throw synchronized identical skills, and the final heat is the open toss heat.
The start value of the toss depends on the skill that the top executes in the air.
The official will be looking for the height of the toss, the top's body positioning, and tight catches from the bases.
So those are the rules for the toss event. We're going to start with the 450 salto heat. Limestone coming out with a start value of 9.90.
You can see number 1, Riley Rossman, getting loaded into the toss here. She's the top for Limestone, and she's going to be doing what's known as a double. So it's a laid out body position with 720 degrees of twist. She twists twice in the air. So again, in toss, really difficult event to judge. The dynamic nature of it is, you know, there's not the holds and the different things that we were seeing in the first half, and so it's a really fast, quick look at that. We have the benefit of replay, of course. So when you see this, the tops are going to be looking for the height of the skill, the extension. You can see that in the catch there, the base in the back leaned back a little bit, and they caught the top in the back part of that catch, and so that'll be a deduction on the catch there. It looked like to me there might have been some separation of the legs as she was completing that skill at the height of her skill, and so that would be a deduction as well that the officials may take.
Again, the officials, they're scoring with their eyes in real time, and they don't have the benefit for instant replay, which is extremely hard in the toss event, especially because it goes so quickly, like you said, and there's so much happening in such a little period of time in the air. Again, that was Riley Rossman, the top for the toss. We'll see her again later on in the synchronized toss, so she's going to be the big top for Limestone.
Yeah, so Limestone, we saw the double. It's a 9.9 start value. So Gannon, we're going to see the double with a kick. So the top will actually split her legs and kick as she's rising in the skill, bring her legs back together and complete those 720 degrees of twist. So that adds a 10th of difficulty and results in a higher start value in the heat for Gannon.
How do you determine what is a skill that is a 10th higher than another skill?
Yeah, that's all part of the scoring committee. So there's a committee of coaches and NCATA staff that they have an annual appointment, and they review the values of skills. And so they'll look at, like we said before, there can be new skills that are submitted by teams that are valued, and then they look at over time as more difficult skills are being added, the values of existing skills.
So here's Gannon coming out for the 450 salto. Again, a start value of 10 for the Knights. That was Gannon competing in the 450 salto. Saw Abigail Hoffman being the back base right there for the Golden Knights as we look at the replay here.
Yeah, you can see that split as she went up to do the twist, and you can see again in the landing a little bit to the right, so that may earn an improper catch deduction from the officials. You can see just right there in the replay how she kind of is her body's a little bit to the right, her shoulders aren't square, and so that would be a deduction, as well as potential deductions in the aerial portion of the skill.
Absolutely. And again, Abby Hoffman was the base right there, catching from behind. She came to Gannon as a tumbler, but hasn't really made an impact as a tumbler at all. In fact, she doesn't tumble at all. She's done a really great job as a base this season, and she's an NCATA All-American. Just talk about what it goes into the process for these athletes to become NCATA All-Americans.
Well, it's they're nominated by their teams. There's an awards committee made up of NCATA administrators and staff, and they review all the season scores, the difficulty of the skills that the athletes are competing, the all-around nature, as well as they can be specialists, and they look at and review the whole body of work of the season to choose that All-American team.
Here's Limestone.
So Limestone in the synchronized heat doing that same skill we saw in the first heat, the double, so the laid out position, 720 degrees of twist with a 9.9 start value. And as you think about the toss and the synchronization, like you said in compulsory, one of the most difficult to synchronize. And so you can see a little bit of difference in timing as they come into the catch. The group on the right, you can see her feet are up a little bit high in the air there, so that's going to be a deduction as compared to the other group. So there'll be some deductions there as well. Yep, you could see those. And then on the other group to the side there, you saw a little bit more of that holly position, but a little bit of movement in the catch. So the catches are really where a lot of those small deductions can come from, as well as the body position, the height of the toss, and little things like keeping your legs together, making sure your legs are straight, pointing your toes. All those things are a little bit harder for us to catch in that split second.
I think the other thing about the toss event is I think that this is probably the most dangerous event for a lot of these student athletes. I mean, you're throwing a woman in the air and then she's coming down. You have to catch her. I was talking to Alexis Cross, who I normally do acrobatics and tumbling meets here at the University of Oregon. When she was top doing the toss, she broke 6 noses during her time in practice. This is a hard event to really practice. I mean, it's very dangerous.
It can be, yeah. And the beauty of, again, the compulsory skills and the progression that the NCATA has built into the sport is that they're not going out and attempting those really difficult skills. Before they move on to twisting, before they move on to some of the difficult elements, they're learning the progressions to go from that back tuck toss to adding in twisting. But yes, there's definitely an element of, with the aerial nature. If you're a base, you gotta be ready to adjust to what the top does in the air. So we're seeing the kick double here for Gannon as well. So Allie Price, the top in the group on the right, and number 19, Maddie Olson, a junior, in the group on the left. And you'll see again, so the teams can choose the angle at which they position the top. So you saw Limestone was straight on. Gannon opted to go to angle their groups towards the bench. So you can see really good timing, a little bit of movement in those catches. As you look here again at the timing, the height of the skills. Overall, really great. Again, I'm glad not to be an official. Toss is the hardest for me to pick out all of those errors.
The toss is definitely really hard. And again, Gannon had a 10.0 start value in the synchronized toss. That's compared to Limestone's 9.90. So far through the first 2 tosses, Gannon a 10.0, Limestone 9.9 through the first 2. So a little bit of difference. Is the first time through the entire meet we're seeing a difference in the start values. Still just minor, a 10th, but still a 10th is a lot in acrobatics and tumbling.
Yeah, and this is something that these teams have both worked up over the season. So they started the season with lower start values, as we were talking about safety and progression. They're starting with skills that are a little bit less difficult, and they've built that up over the season. So I believe with Gannon, this is the first time that they have done that synchronized kick double in competition this season. And for Limestone, they had gone to the doubles in the middle of the season, weren't having success with it, so backed it down to a single, and now brought it back up to the double again for the championship. So in this third heat, the open heat, we're going to see layout 360. So it's going to be 1 full twist in the air in the laid out position.
That was Limestone competing in the open heat in the toss event. It's the final heat in the toss event. Let's go ahead and look at it one more time. Again, Limestone, a start value here of 9.4.
So a great start here. You can see that skill's a little lower than some of the other skills that we've seen. So that might earn a lack of height deduction. You can see also that she just goes right into that twist. So she might also be missing that extension that's expected to rise out of that toss group, do that skill at the highest possible point of the toss, and be fully extended before they're coming back into that catch. So I think right there they're going to see probably a lower score and some more deductions for that heat.
Is the height of a toss or the too early start point to twisting in the air a neutral penalty or a deduction?
Those are execution.
Execution.
So a neutral penalty, for example, would be as if she didn't do the twist. So they declared that they were going to do a full twist, and she went out and she just did a back tuck because it would be different than what they planned to do prior to the meet.
So here's Gannon wrapping up the final heat in the toss event.
So we see Allie Price, number 2, again, All-American. This is an Arabian Tuck Open with 540 degrees of twists. So it's a fun, unique toss that we don't see very often, but she executes it very well. She scored very high throughout the season in this heat. It starts out with a 9.9 start value. You can see here in the replay. She just has beautiful body positions through the air. All the timing and the order of the skills are important in this toss. And she has been averaging out of a 9.9, she's been averaging a 9.7 throughout the season, with several times that she scored a 9.85 or a 9.8. So looking for another solid heat here from Allie Price and a solid toss event for both teams.
Allie Price, the described freak of nature right there, wrapping up the toss event. But that's going to do it for us here in the toss event. We're going to step aside and take another break. But when we come back, we're going to announce the scores for the toss event. And we'll have the tumbling event coming up on deck. Welcome back. So we just wrapped up the toss event. And let's walk you through the scores. So Limestone, they got a 9.450 out of 9.90 in heat number 1. Gannon 9.700 out of 10.0. That was in heat number 1 of the toss event. Then heat number 2, which was the synchronized toss. Limestone 9.050 out of 9.90. Gannon 9.625 out of 10.0 in the synchronized toss. And then in the open toss, Gannon 9.750 out of 9.90. And Limestone 8.975 out of 9.40. Overall, Gannon 125.650 to Limestone's 122.720. Let's go ahead and introduce you to the tumbling event.
This is the tumbling event.
This event has 6 heats. The start value of each heat is determined by the difficulty and combination of skills in each pass. The first 3 heats are synchronized, a duo, a trio, and a quad tumbling pass, in which all athletes in the group must execute the same tumbling pass from start to finish. The last 3 heats are individual tumbling passes with different requirements in each. The officials will be looking for form, execution, and proper technique of each skill.
So that was Limestone competing in the duo heat in the tumbling. That was Nicole Johnson, number 9, and Brooke McAfee, number 19. Let's go ahead and look at that one more time.
Yes, so you can see, again, synchronization is key here. So you can see they're a little off in the middle of that. As they come through the middle of the pass there, you can see a little break in the continuity of the skill. And you can see here in the landings, a little bit of their chest down. So those are going to be deductions that the officials would take. They're allowed a step. So they have to declare in advance if they're going to take a step, but it has to be a controlled step. So the thought of a controlled step is that it's not one that you have to take. So as we see if you're landing in a blind landing where your movement's going forward, you might see more of a lunge in the step. That was a nice controlled step, but something that we might look for throughout the heat.
Again, this is going to be 6 heats in the tumbling event. There's going to be a team portion of the tumbling event, which are the first 3 heats, and then there's going to be a solo portion of the tumbling heat, which will be an aerial, a 6-element, and an open tumbling at the very end. In the duo pass, Limestone had a start value of 9.50. Gannon in the duo pass, they're going to have a start value of 9.90. Overall, in the tumbling event as a whole, Gannon has a total amount of points they could get, 188.35 to Limestone's 187.1. So throughout, Gannon's going to have a little bit higher start values.
So we're going to see this duo. They're going to be competing a round-off 3 whips into a back layout with 360 degrees of twist, otherwise called a full. So you see here the round off 3 whips. The whips, you're all aerial skills. Your hands are not going back on the floor outside of that round off. So really difficult to keep those together, to keep the pace, the continuity of that pass, to make sure that they're the same height throughout, they keep those strong body positions and have the power at the end of that skill to have, you should see some rise in that final skill, that final element of the pass. A back handspring and a whip is included into a pass to create acceleration for the final skill. So you want to see all of that build to see the final skill have rise, come through, and have a powerful finish to the pass. You can see a little bit of synchronization. You can see in that layout as they came out that their body position, they pike their bodies a little bit to get their toes on the floor. So those will be some minor deductions that the officials may take. But overall, very well synchronized and great execution through those whips to the final skill.
Again, those were both sophomores on the mat right there. That was number 2, Allie Price, who we've talked about throughout the entire meet. And number 41, Caitlin Crawford, who's another sophomore on this Gannon team. Crawford, she's actually a tumbler by heart and specific to tumbling. She's from Virginia.
Representing the Saints, Acacia Johnson.
Now Limestone's going to come out. It's going to be the trio pass. Aisha Johnson, Genesis Carson, and Kalia Gamaldo.
This is a fun pass. We're going to see some front tumbling incorporated into this. So they're going to start with a front handspring, do a front tuck, then a round off, back handspring, into a 1.5. So 540 degrees of twist, laid out body position into that final skill.
Let's go ahead and look at it one more time. Limestone competing.
Yeah, synchronization great through those first couple skills. You can see as they go into that second half of the pass that the synchronization breaks. So you'll see some deductions there, as well as when we talked about controlled steps. That's going to be, I'm going to let the officials decide that, but it looked like those they may get a deduction on the steps there. So it's a little bit more different if you're landing 360 degrees of twist, you're landing, you're not having that blind landing. In the 540 degrees, the 1.5, you have a blind landing. So they're going to look for how they extended into that final. If they're sort of if they're leaning back as they go into that position, they may have under rotated. So there'll be all of those things will factor into the final score for the heat.
And the officials are also looking to make sure they actually land on the mat, because if they land too far off the mat, then that is a deduction itself.
Correct. Those are boundary violations, and so those are good ones to point out. If they land on the mat and they step off, it's a 10th. If they land completely off the mat, it's 5/10. So it's really important, and you'll see the athletes, and it's amazing how they can kind of correct and track where they are in the air. Again, the muscle memory, the repetition of doing these things. But you can see them sometimes feel their way towards the side of the mat and correct to make sure that they're landing on the mat. Even if they do have to step off, it's a much smaller deduction than landing all the way off the mat.
So that was Limestone competing in the trio pass. That was a start value of 9.60. For Gannon, they're actually going to have a lower start value in the trio pass. They're going to have a start value of 9.1. So that trio pass, this one that we're about to see, that's a huge area where Limestone can really make up points.
Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity to win the heat and to gain some points in the overall in the event. And a lot of times those decisions just come to personnel and what, in terms of the synchronization and the skill and the abilities of the team, the types of skills that they have that they can compete, and the people that can fit together. As we talked about in those other heats, it's really about the feel they have for each other, the timing, the sizes, heights, the pace of their tumbling. So we're going to see a round off, back handspring, 1.5. And again, a nice heat, really synchronized with fewer skills. That helps in terms of the overall synchronization. So I think what they're going for here is that high level of execution with the lower start value to just get as many points out of the heat as possible.
So that was number 3, Charisma Felix, number 14, Annie Colantonio, and number 16, Ashley Falgren, competing for Gannon in the trio pass. Again, a 9.1 start value.
A great example here of not a controlled step. You can see here in the front of the mat, number 16. When she landed, she was a little bit out of control, and so that you could see that the step was necessary. It wasn't one that she just took on her own. So that would be a deduction there that will be assessed in that heat.
And each step is a 10th deduction, which when you're looking at the scores is a lot. I mean, this is already less than a 2-point meet right now, and a 10th could really climb you back if you get many, many steps. And in the tumbling, there's 6 heats, so there's a lot of steps that could be taken away.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah, and the tumbling event, 6 heats, or 1.5 heats through this one. Actually, 2 heats through this one. We're going to have the quad pass coming up, and then we'll move to the solo portion of the tumbling event.
So in the quad pass, we're going to see the same skills that we just saw in Gannon's trio pass. So they're going to do a round off back at spring 1.5. So it's 540 degrees of twist in the laid out body position. So again, synchronization, timing, really important.
Brienne Popejoy, Sierra Bopard, and Michaela Knozer.
So that was Limestone competing in the quad pass, a 9.1 start value.
So we look at the replay, you can see great timing on the round off backhand spring into the layout. The judges are primarily going to take deductions on those landings. So you could see as we look at the replay here, there was the second person in from the bottom, number 26, she landed her knees, there's a kind of a deep squat there in her landing. You can see, you know, some legs and knee separation. Again, we're seeing this in the slow-mo replay, and then also those controlled steps. I'll also be looking again for that rotation and that extension coming out of the skill into the landing.
It must be so hard for these officials to score in real time. You have to really be looking at the nooks and creaks of every single event, and in real time, that's really hard to do. And looking at many steps, and I guess that's why there is 5 officials for the national championships, because you want this scoring to be as accurate as you can, and you have 5 people, that's 10 eyes on the mat.
Exactly, exactly. And, you know, they get a lot of practice. So whereas we're just watching a few meets a season, you know, they're practicing year-round. They're also primarily come from gymnastics and cheerleading backgrounds of judging, so they're judging other events. They're familiar with all of the skills. And again, they go through specific training, and they have continuing education throughout the season to make sure that they're doing all the things that they can to provide consistent officiating across the country. But it's a difficult challenge. Any sport that has judging, you know, similar to diving and gymnastics, artistic gymnastics, it's an element of the sport that you have to factor in, just as all officiating has to be factored in. You know, in basketball, I'm sure you'd have coaches that would say if they see a certain official, they know they're going to get more foul calls or different calls. So similar to that, you know, that's the way that officiating works as well for acrobatics and tumbling.
So that was Gannon in the quad pass, a 9.55 start value for the Golden Knights. As we go in and look at the replay one more time.
So you see they started that pass with a front tuck, then they go into a round-off backhand spring into the 1.5. So you can see a little bit of the break in the synchronization there on the 2 athletes on the front half of the mat. 2 athletes in the back half of the mat are pretty well synchronized, but that's going to be some big synchronization deductions here, as well as all the things we've talked about going into those landings. So the officials are actually watching the quad pass in groups. So you have, you know, officials watching the 2 athletes traveling in the back and the 2 athletes in the front, and then those scores are averaged, and then they get put together for the final score of the heat.
Again, that was the quad pass for Gannon, Courtney Selensky, Brianna Ari, Lauren Rupert, and Kat Rodriguez for the Golden Knights. And that wraps up the team portion of the tumbling event. We're now going to have the aerial pass, the 6-element pass, and the open pass, which in my opinion is the most exciting part of the tumbling event, because in the solo portion of the tumbling event, this is where you really get the best of the best tumblers.
That's fun to hear. I love the synchronized tumbling, so
really?
I guess it's all a matter of preference. But I agree with you in that you get to really see the difficulty go up, and so I enjoy the challenge of the synchronization and all those different elements and the combinations that teams put together. But when we move into these solo heats, you're going to see some really elite tumbling passes. Beautiful skills. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Here's the All-American Brooke McAfee.
She's going to start with a front. Oh, nope, I have the wrong pass. Excuse me. So we saw her do a round-off back handspring 1.5 to another round-off whip and a back tap. So as we look at the replay here, you're going to see that that acceleration of that pass slowed down a little bit as she came through the second portion of the pass. And so there's a little break there in that 1.5 in the continuity. So the whip in that body position, she came through a little bit piked. A whip should be really long, flowing through here. So as we look back again, there's the 1.5. So you can see that little break in continuity. She adjusted, got that whip, but she had that piked body position instead of a laid out body position into the back tuck. Another deduction that can happen is that if they're going on the mat, they have to kind of stay in a straight line. So you can see how she started to kind of deviate towards the front of the mat. That will be a deduction as well.
So that was Brooke McAfee. She has a 9.75 start value in the aerial pass. One of the interesting things that you'll see from these athletes in the solo passes is the positioning in which they're going to tumble. Some teams, they'll have their tumblers go across the entire mat. Some teams, they'll have them go diagonally across the mat. And that's just to, I guess, show what they want to show to the officials.
Part of that is true, and it's also the length of the pass. So if there's more skills, they like to go diagonal, and they have a little bit of more room to do that. I definitely think you're right in terms of the angle of the officials as well. But they declare that in advance, and like you said, they get to select where they start from. The only options are the back corner or across the middle of the mat. So the back corner to the front corner or across the middle baseline, sideline to sideline.
Representing Gannon.
Now for Gannon, Michaela Lanza is going to come out and compete in the aerial tumbling heat. Start value of 10.0.
So we're going to see her do some front tumbling in this pass. Starts with a front tuck, round off back handspring, a 1.5, into another round off, and another full at the end. So 360 degrees of twist at the end. So again, anytime that you're combining that 1.5 in the middle of the pass, you're looking for the continuity, which she had really, came out of that really well into a round off. No other elements, right into another full layout. So a great skill combination, really powerful. You can see the rise of the 1.5 back into the round off, and then the rise of the final skill. So that's a challenge sometimes of incorporating the 1.5 or a layout in the middle of the pass, is that you have to get that rise twice through the pass. So that's where the continuity, the acceleration, all of the power of the athlete really come in to make that pass what they want it to be from start to finish.
The tumbling event is just so remarkable to watch because it is all the power that they're generating themselves. Like, this isn't a springboard, and so because they're just generating all this power themselves, it's just so impressive to watch. Some of the movements that you'll see is just remarkable because you can't believe that they're able to create that much power just by their own bodies.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. In artistic gymnastics and in power tumbling, you see greater combinations of twisting, of double layouts or double tucks. That's just not feasible really on a non-spring floor. And so what is fun about tumbling and acrobatics and tumbling is the combination that you put together. So it's a little bit of a different look, but it's really fun to put together different combinations and see how those sequences can come together. So we're going to see more front tumbling here. She's going to start with a front tuck into a front handspring to another front tuck. Then she'll do a round off back handspring 1.5. Really nice control. You can see again there she had all of the rise throughout that pass and the different elements. And doing 3 front tumbling skills in a row, you can really see that nice continuity that she has. Really beautiful. She's also tall. It's interesting to watch tall tumblers. It's just, as a tall person, maybe I notice this, but it's really interesting to see the lines of a tall tumbler versus a short tumbler. And you can see here that she really extends through all of these skills. She gets good height, continuity throughout. You can see, again, on the replay, we can see a little bit of knee spent, a little bit of leg separation, but overall, really nice pass.
That was Johnson competing in the 6-element pass for Limestone, a start value of 9.95, which is almost their highest start value in the tumbling event. Their highest start value is actually their next one in the open pass, which they're going to have a 10.0. But so far, a lot higher start values for Limestone in the solo passes compared to the team passes.
Yeah, definitely. And again, that's just going back to, you know, the synchronization piece. Like, you have to have 4 athletes that can compete those skills. And so the individual passes are a chance for those athletes to shine and do these more elite skills.
So now we're going to see Allie Price. This one should be exciting.
Yeah, starting with the 10.0, we're going to see a round off whip. Sorry, I got hung up watching. Oh, a little celebration there. Roping in the team. So a really nice pass for Allie. She's been consistently performing. So she does a round off whip Arabian into a round off backhand spring 1.5. So a really high difficulty combination of skills. She had great continuity. Again, looks like a controlled step to me. I'll leave it to the officials. But overall, coming out of that Arabian, you can see how she flowed and the continuity that she had through that. Really nice pass for Allie. I'm sure she's going to be excited.
I think one of my favorite parts about the tumbling, and maybe this is just acrobatics and tumbling in general, is just the support from the coaches. Once these athletes finish a pass and they complete it all the way through, you can just see that they look immediately to their coaches, and a lot of the times they'll go run up and give their coach a hug, which I think is a really awesome part of this sport. It just kind of plays into the community aspect and the family attitude of the sport.
Yeah, I love that you use the word family. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, as in any sport, the time that these athletes are spending training and working with their coaches and the limited number of times throughout the season that they get a chance to come out and compete, it's exciting. You know, you want to do well in your opportunities to compete, and when you do well, you hit something, you want to celebrate.
Kyla Gamaldo going to be out here for the open tumbling event.
So we're going to see a round off, 3 whips, backhand spring 1.5. Really beautiful. What a dynamic pass. Oh, she's going to do some celebration here. Got the gloves on.
Everybody from Limestone was feeling that one. Let's go ahead and look at the replay one more time.
So again, starting with a round off, 3 whips in a row into 2 backhand springs and a 1.5. Just so you can see the power, the acceleration through that whole pass all the way through. So again, the officials are going to pick out tiny, tiny deductions, leg separation, potentially the body positions through these. You can see a little bit as she got through those whips, they started to travel a little less, so that might be a potential deduction, but overall a beautiful pass.
So that was the final heat for Limestone in the tumbling event. We're going to have one more heat, and they'll be from Gannon, who's going to have a start value of 9.90. So again, that 10.0 start value on the open pass, one of the few heats in the tumbling event that Limestone actually has a higher start value than Gannon in. And so that's an opportunity for Gannon, for Limestone to potentially get more points than the Knights. And now we're going to see Caitlin Crawford come back out onto the floor, the sophomore, in the open tumbling for Gannon.
So we're bringing it all the way back to the duo pass. We're going to see a round off, 3 whips, and a back layout 360. So again, connecting those skills, keeping the continuity of the body position throughout, and we're going to see here. So we do a round off, whip, 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 and a 360 there. So you can see, again, not quite the same rise at the end on that last skill here. She got up in the air, but there might be some deductions there on the body position as she piked her legs through to reach to the landing.
So that'll wrap up the tumbling event. Limestone and Gannon facing off against each other. We're going to step aside and take one more break, but when we come back, we're going to get the scores for the tumbling event, and then we'll have the team event, which is 2 minutes and 45 seconds of organized chaos. Don't go anywhere. Number 3, Gannon taking on number 6, Limestone in the opening quarterfinals matchup here at the NCATA National Championships. Let's go ahead and look at the scores for the tumbling event. Gannon, 9.50 out of 9.90 in the duo. Limestone, 8.125 out of 9.50. That was in the duo heat. In the trio, Gannon, 8.475 out of 9.10. For Limestone, 8.400 out of 9.60. In the quad pass, Gannon, 8.70 out of 9.55. Limestone, 8.150 out of 9.10. In the aerial pass, Gannon had a start value of 10. They got a 9.575. For Limestone, a start value 9.75. They got 9.175. In the 6 element, Gannon, 9.700 out of a 10.0 start value. 9.95 start value, so just a little bit below the start value of Gannon for Limestone. And they got a 9.675, so just a little bit below what Gannon scored. In the open tumbling, 9.750 out of 9.90. And for Limestone, 9.80 out of 10.00 overall, 55.75 to 53.325 in the tumbling event. That brings our score 181.400 to 176.075. So those are the scores for the tumbling event. Gannon growing their lead a little bit more, but we still have the team event to go. And let's go ahead and introduce you to the team event now.
The last event is the team event.
This is a very fast-paced event, so be sure to keep your eyes peeled. The team event features up to 24 athletes on the floor, performing synchronized acro, pyramid, toss, and tumbling in a routine set to music lasting no more than 2 minutes and 45 seconds. In the team event, the officials are looking for the stability of the structures, body positioning, and the technique of the tumbling.
So that's the rules for the team event, or as I just like to call it, 2 minutes and 45 seconds of organized chaos. This is going to be very exciting. You're going to see about 24 student athletes come out onto the mat, and so much is happening. It's just so exciting.
It's going to be a lot of fun. There's required elements in each of the skill categories. We'll talk through that a little bit, but really want to let you watch this. Like you said, there's a lot to see, so enjoy the show. We'll catch you on the replays. Starting here with their pyramid sequence.
that was the team event from Limestone University, and like I said, 2 minutes, 45 seconds of organized chaos. There's a lot happening, and there's a lot to be broken down. Let's go ahead and look at the replay.
You know, as we watched there, we saw some unfortunate errors for Limestone. In the opening pyramid sequence, there was some synchronization. Unfortunately, they saw an acro fall here in this group on the front to the left, and they came down in that descending portion, just, you know, fell out of that early. So that'll be a 1.5 deduction. They had some great, you know, overall doing great, moved into standing tumbling. There's 21 required passes in standing tumbling and 21 in running tumbling. 12 of those have to be synchronized, so you can see how they choose to lay those out throughout the event. Unfortunately, they also had a fall in tumbling later on in the running tumbling portion. So those are going to be some big deductions that are going to be tough to overcome. They were going in 5 points down and had about a 3-point difference in start value. So with a couple of falls, that's going to be a tough overall score for them. But you got to see the fun and the personality in the end there at the dance. And that's always the fun part where the teams dance is not scored. It's just really incorporated so that the teams can show some creativity and some personality. So overall, you know, Limestone should be very proud. A great meet and a great event. But unfortunately, a couple falls are going to be tough to overcome when they're already behind going into the event following Gannon.
I think one of the biggest things about the team event that is so, I guess, forgot about is the mental aspect, because there's a lot going on physically, but let's say you have a fall early on, you have to be mentally sound to recover and not let that one moment affect the rest of the routine, because there's still so much to go. And so if you have a fall in the first 15 seconds, then you need to be mentally sound for the next 2 minutes and 30 seconds and try to get back into it.
You're right, that's a huge element. I think it's probably the biggest element that teams would say is coming out, and the execution side is more mental. They've done this routine hundreds of times. They know what they're trying to accomplish out there. They've executed it well hundreds of times, like I said. So it really comes down to how their bodies are feeling, and it could be a mental error, and then like you said, they have to rebound and go on and continue through the rest of those elements. They have 30 elements in the Acro skill category. That's a lot. Some of those are synchronized. They have 4 pyramids that they have to do. 2 of those have to be synchronized. 5 tosses, 3 of those need to be synchronized. Then, like we said before, 21 passes in standing and running tumbling. So there's a lot, like you said, it's a tough challenge without any errors. So really keeping their focus. A lot of the coaches talk about it's the next play. You have to let that go, move on to the next portion, stay strong.
So now Gannon's going to come out, 24 women onto the mat as Gannon gets ready for the team event. So that was Gannon in the team event. That'll wrap up this meet, but they're gonna do the scores right now. But overall, what a team event.
Yeah, no, great outing for Gannon's first meet of the tournament. They had some errors. We did see 2 tumbling falls during the event, so those, the falls kind of will equal each other out overall between the teams. And I know that's something, if Gannon is going to advance, that they're going to want to make sure that they clean up and nail. They had an Acro sequence in the back left corner early on that, struggled. She fought to keep it up there, which is incredibly difficult to do. But those execution errors are going to be less than a 1.5 deduction for a fall. So overall, I think they did really well. I think, we saw what it really comes down to as, again, if Gannon's going to advance, which based on the scores going in and the start values seems likely, they're going to want to clean that up. The execution of those acro elements and those tumbling elements in a closer meet are going to make the difference here in these team event scores. Because there are so many elements in each of those skill categories, the technique and execution of those really makes the overall difference in that final score for the team event.
Absolutely. Gannon had a start value of 106.99 in the team event. Limestone a 104.18. And again, with that many points, it's still anyone's game, but they've seen both teams. There's still a little bit of falls from both sides, and so it'll be interesting to see how it's scored. Gannon currently leading 181.40 to Limestone's 176.075. But at this time, we're going to take our last break, and then we'll introduce the scores for the team event, which will wrap us up here in the opening round in the quarterfinal matchup, 6 versus 3 seed. We'll be right back. Welcome back inside the Matthew Knight Arena. We're still awaiting the scores here. Limestone having fun in the practice mat. We saw Brooke McAfee just doing ginormous somersaults. Circus tricks. I don't even know how to describe it. She's having fun, jumping in midair, doing a tumble, and just, you got to do this right now. There's a lot of free time in between the team event and them announcing the final scores, and I think that you'll see a lot of teams be creative with what they do in these times, and Limestone right now, they're just doing a lot of fun tricks.
Yeah, at this point the competition's over and it's time to wait for the scores and be prepared for the next set.
So we're going to have the scores right here.
Bringing today's meet totals to 261.105 for Limestone.
So for the team event, Gannon 85.300, Limestone 85.030. So just a little bit lower than Gannon in the team event for Limestone. Overall, Gannon's going to win the opening meet in the NCATA National Championships, 266.70 to 261.105. And this is the opening round. The 3-seed Gannon advances. But before we get into that, let's just talk a little bit about the team event and how that's scored a little bit.
Yeah, so the team event is very structured, as we talked about. It's broken into segments of those skill categories, and the coaches lay all of that out on a spreadsheet prior to the meet. So the officials know where all of those skills are taking place, when they're taking place, and in what order. So the officials generally are watching a third of the mat. There's 3 officials doing execution during the team event, and 2 officials at the championship panel that are what we call line judges. So they're watching for neutral penalties, boundary violations, falls, things like that, to ensure that those big errors are caught. But they make adjustments as it goes on. So if there is a group of sequences all over on the left side of the mat, it's not up to one official to see it all. They'll break it up and spread it out throughout the entire routine so that they can make sure that they have clear sight lines for everything that's going on in order to judge the execution accurately and get the best possible consistency in scoring.
So Gannon is going to move on. They're going to move on to tomorrow. They'll be playing at 4:30 p.m. They'll be taking on the winner of Fairmont State, who's the 7 seed, and Azusa Pacific, that's the 2 seed. But overall, this is the most historic season in Gannon history. And the Gannon Knights, they move on. So the next meet's going to be taken off at 1:30 in about 30 minutes or so. Or excuse me, not 1:30. In about 30 minutes or so, which will be around 1:50. We'll have the next meet, which will be Azusa Pacific and Fairmont State. It'll be here on ESPN+. But don't go anywhere. There's still lots of acrobatics and tumbling throughout the day here at the NCATA National Championships. It's been a pleasure. Thank you to everybody that's been a part of this broadcast. Nat Uretsky, Janelle Cook, and everybody back in studio. We'll be right back in about 30 minutes here at the NCATA National Championships.